I am a registered nurse, and some of you have already been saying, what does a nurse know about driver's ed? Like, why are you here to tell us about driver's ed? So a little bit about myself. I'm from Springfield, Missouri, and if you don't know where that is, that's the southwest corner of the state, right in the new Tornado Alley. So we're just about an hour from Joplin. Tornadoes last week that went through Baxter Springs, Kansas. Baxter Springs actually borders Joplin. Those two city limits touch, and so all the tornadoes just went around us. I think they knew I didn't have time to deal with it, so that was awesome for me anyway, not for the people in Baxter Springs and Bologna. But that's where I'm from. We're the home of Brad Pitt. Brad Pitt, shout out to the ladies. His brother still lives there. His brother looks just like him, maybe a little cuter actually. He is married, but we get to see him every day, so that's the awesome thing about Springfield. Also for the guys, Springfield is the home of Bass Pro Shops. If you've ever heard of Bass Pro, national headquarters is there. O'Reilly Automotive, national headquarters is in Springfield. So a lot of things are in Springfield, Missouri, and we're about the same size town as Boise, so I always love to come here. It's like my second home or something. I feel pretty comfortable. My job as a trauma nurse started in the burn unit ICU. I was taking care of people who had just had the worst day of their life. But before that, I had worked in the world of public relations and actually worked for Congressman, now Senator Roy Blunt, when he was just in the Missouri political scene, and helped him with one of his campaigns. Learned a lot from him and went to nursing school, and he said that was the biggest mistake of my life, and I completely disagree with him. He wanted me to go into, political science and run campaigns, and I said, absolutely not. I'm not doing it. I want to help people. And so anyway, I became a nurse and learned really quickly that it was a rewarding job, but that I could mesh my skills of public relations and nursing. And so our hospital was the only level 1 trauma center in southwest Missouri at the time. And they needed to start an injury prevention program. And one of the surgeons came to me and he said, you know about this stuff, right? You know how to make people smile? I'm like, I guess. And he said, well, we need somebody who can go out and tell the community how to be safe. Okay. My first day on the job, I show up. I'm wearing a business suit. I'm like, hi, I'm here. What do you want me to do? And he goes, I don't know. Figure it out. And that's literally what I did. So for the past 13 years, or for 13 years, I spent my days dissecting injury data, trauma data from our trauma center, why people get injured, and then developing community programs and interventions to go out and help people stay out of our hospital. And so one of the things that we discovered is the number 1 cause of trauma admission to our hospital was a traffic crash. So I became this expert in highway safety and have traveled around for about 10 years helping states with highway safety programs. We've changed the laws in many states in this country. I was the chair of the National Child Passenger Safety Board, have done work for NHTSA, done work for the state of Idaho. I got this brilliant idea 5 years ago that traditional driver's ed, which is not required in the state of Missouri, was just not cutting it. Missouri has about 6 million people. Leading cause of death 5 years ago was a traffic crash. We were losing about 1,300 people a year on Missouri roads, and the majority of them were teens. So I applied for a grant from the Kohl's Cares for Kids Foundation, Kohl's department stores, and hired 5 driving instructors off the street. And I said, hey, you guys, I want you to take everything you know about driver's ed and I want you to put it over here in a box. And I want you to forget about it. We're going to start with a fresh slate. We're going to figure out the right way to teach teenagers how to drive. Now, in Missouri, you can't get your permit until you're 15. You can sit for your full license when you're 18, but you can get your intermediate license at 16. So we actually put them behind the wheel at 16 with restrictions. So we decided during numerous brainstorming sessions that didactic learning in the classroom was not very valuable to teens. So we took the entire classroom education and figured out how to teach it behind the wheel. We had focus groups, we brought students in, we brought parents in, we brought teachers in, and we reinvented the way we teach driver's ed. Once we thought we had our process and the product down, we started the driving school. The first hospital-based driver's education program in the state of Missouri. We started bringing kids in, charging them for lessons with no classroom. Kids loved it because it took less time. They felt like they were actually doing something. But as one girl put it, like when you draw those things on the paper, like I have no clue what it means, but when I'm at the stop sign, like I know that guy goes first. So she got it. And what we found is they haven't lived the experience to know what the diagram is on the paper. And we can tell them all the scary things about driving, but how do you apply that to actually what we do behind the wheel? So we're 5 years in, we're doing reliability and validity studies, we're measuring our injury rates and our crash rates. We still have crashes, people who graduate from our program still have crashes, but what we found is we have confident drivers in their skills. Didactic learners aren't as confident in their skills. They may be aware, but how do you take awareness and apply it to what we actually do behind the wheel? So today, what I'm going to talk to you about is a similar thing. You guys are safety professionals, right? When? Just when you're at work? When you're in your own car? So there's this thing, this phenomenon that happens in highway safety. And I learned this lesson from Leanna Depew, who is the Brent Jennings of Missouri. She's the director of highway safety for MoDOT. And I had to go on a road trip with her. And what I learned is she has a lead foot. Huh. The highway safety director in the state of Missouri likes to speed. Interesting. Did anybody hear on the news about the highway safety director in Arkansas just last week? Did it make it on the news here? Oh my gosh, were you cringing? So this guy's going 80 in a work zone. And the speed limit was posted as 60. The police officer pulls him over and is like, oh, you're the highway safety dude. You give us grant money and overtime enforcement money. I'm not going to write you a ticket. Totally let him go. And so, of course, it got out because it was dispatched and people are mad about it. I would have written him a ticket and maybe even framed it anyway. So what we're going to talk about today is seeing yourself in highway safety and why that's important to us and what message we're giving to our teens. So, newsflash, guess what? People die in crashes every day. Woohoo, we should be afraid, right? Does it change our driving behavior? The fact that people die on the roads, do you think it's going to happen to you? I didn't get in my car and drive to the airport and say, woo, today's the day I'm going to be in a wreck. No, we don't do that. We think it's not going to happen to us. We think it's going to happen to everybody else. So if we know it happens, how do we get to behavior change? That's the million-dollar question. Have you experienced this? How many of you are parents? Raise your hand. You know this happens. The first time you see that innocent little face say a bad word, she just lets it fly. Ladies, you blamed your husband, didn't you? I mean, it's embarrassing. You're in the grocery store and, they say the F word. You're like, of course, that's a reflection of your parenting and you, right? So you're like, oh my gosh. And that's what you say. Where did you hear that? It wasn't me, right? And then you go home and you yell at your husband for talking like that in front of the child, Or worse, it happens at church. It's so embarrassing. And we say bad words. We all get upset. We say bad words. And then we expect our child not to pick up that behavior, right? So, you go home and you tell your husband, you've got to stop talking like that in front of the child. You've got to stop saying those words. And guess what? It's too late. She already knows. She already knows the word. She knows how to use it. She knows how to apply it. You messed up. Sorry. We do the same thing when we teach kids how to drive. Do as I say, not as I do. Here's what parents are saying to their teenagers when they set this big fat double standard. Child of mine, I do not want you to die. If you die in a wreck, I will have to live with that for the rest of my life. I will be pained. It will be horrible. I will grieve. There will be a hole in my soul if you die. But if I die, you get a big lump of cash and you get over it. Right? So we have two different levels of expectation for our children. Think about this. Parents start teaching their teenagers how to drive the first day they put them forward-facing in a car seat. From that day until they are 15 years old, you got mom driving with her knee, chucking Happy Meals in the back seat, scheduling her nail appointment on her phone, and sipping her latte. Then, kid gets to be 13, mom's stressing out that they can get a permit at 14. Oh my gosh, at 15, no cell phone in the car. You cannot have your phone in the car. But mom picks the kid up from school, and what's she doing? Oh yeah, we'll be there at 7. I'll bring a casserole. Get in, I'm on the phone. Yeah, shh, go ahead. Okay, yeah, do you need me to bring anything else? What about the tablecloth? Oh yeah, you got it. Okay, yeah, sounds good. We'll be there at 7. Bye-bye. How's your day, sweetie? Oh, hang on a second. Let me send a note to your dad. Really? This happens every day, doesn't it? In the world of driving, the media, and law enforcement is partly to blame, no offense to my law enforcement friends out there, we have this phrase, we call it texting and driving. And who do we blame for it? Teenagers. Not texting. The number one person to be distracted by this thing in the car is not the teenager. It's a middle-aged female. She's Facebooking, she's tweeting, she's Instagramming, she's communicating with her circle of influence because we as human beings hate to be alone. We don't know how to be alone. We don't know how to quiet our minds. And so we get in the car, newsflash, driving is boring. So we go to our old friend, the smartphone, to have a little entertainment. How many of you are looking at your phones right now? Thanks for admitting it. Exactly. We need something to fill the void. And then our teenagers get in the car and we're like, no phone. Really? I had this mom come in to sign her kid up for driving lessons. I'll never forget this. She was so mad at me. So she's sitting there across the desk or filling out the paperwork. And, her teenager's like, oh, mad to be there. And I'm trying to break the ice between them. I can tell they have a little rift going. And mom proudly proclaims, when she drives, I make her put her phone in the trunk. I said, really? She's like, yes, that's the safety thing. And I'm thinking to myself, well, she saw this on Oprah or something, so she's telling me. And so she says, yes, that's the safest thing. And I go, when you drive, do you put your phone in the trunk? And the mom's like, no. And the girl's like, and I said, that is the lamest thing I've ever heard. And the mom is just like shocked. She's like, what? I'm like, oh my gosh, what if she crashes? How's she going to call 911? She's trapped upside down, restrained by her safety device. She can't get out and her phone's in the trunk. Really? She's going to be there for 3 days in the cold before anybody ever finds her body. And the mom is just like, it's the most horrible thing you could say. I'm like, no. I'm like, let's be realistic about it. I'm like, you should have the same driving rule as your daughter. If you're giving her the privilege of driving, have the same rule. And so the daughter, she's like, I like you. I'm like, it's okay, I got your back. So we start to talk about what do you do with the phone in the car, right? So I tell the mom, hey, I'm human. I mean, if you cut my hand, it's red, not green blood that comes out. I'm not an alien. When my phone goes off in the car, what happens? I'm like Pavlov's dog. I'm important. Somebody loves me. Who is it? Oh, it's just my mom, right? But you get those things, right? You get that feeling of validation as a human being. Ladies, gentlemen, how many of you take this to the bathroom with you? How many of you have ever reached your hand outside the shower because your phone went off? People do this. People do this. And we're telling you, get in the car and don't look at this. Act like it doesn't exist. Lock it in the trunk. Really? Really? So for me, as a human, I have to put it on silent. I have to put it upside down, open the little console lid, put it in there, and shut the thing. It's gone. I can't see it. It's gone. Here I am at the stoplight, right? I do this thing. And then I know that the car behind me is honking because the light turned green and I didn't know it. You guys are laughing because you've done this. And you're driver's ed instructors. You should be ashamed of yourself. That's what I'm getting at. We preach it all day long. How do we change our own behavior? How do we actually make a culture change? I'm not sure. Who goes first? You guys have all heard about the ease of prevention, right? Engineering, education, law enforcement. Put those all together and you're going to prevent some injury, prevent some death. Do you think law enforcement has enforced all they can? Do you think we've educated all we can? Do you think the engineers have engineered all they can? People are still dying. So what's missing here? Let's look at this. Raise your hand if you're a police officer. Shout out to you. You're awesome. You're successful at saving lives because people don't want to get busted. Driver's ed instructors, raise your hand if you've ever gotten a ticket in your life. Yep. And you teach our teenagers how to drive. You should be proud. Be proud, Idaho. You guys all know that feeling when you see the blue and red lights in your rear view mirror and you're like, oh crap. And you get that adrenaline thing right here in your chest and suddenly you can't breathe. You know that feeling that I'm talking about? You're like, oh, he's not going after me. Yes, he is. You know this feeling I'm talking about, and you're thinking, how am I going to explain this one? And I hope this doesn't make the headlines, and oh my gosh, this is really hilarious. When I first took my safety job, I'm driving to give a safety talk at a highway through a small rural town that makes their revenue by setting up a speed trap. And so I was going not more than 5 over, but not less than 2 over the speed limit, and they pulled me over. And I have my big Mercy safety shirt on, right, with the official logo that I'm the safe driving instructor. And so he comes walking up to the car, over his sunglasses, and he sees me and he goes, oh my God, it's you. And I'm like, hey, what's up? Do you want me to just make a donation to, the county fund? What do you want me to do here? And he's like, where are you going? I'm like, I'm going to Mount Vernon to talk about safe driving. It was a good day. It was a good day. I was in my own car, by the way, not the hospital's car. You know you can get a ticket, right? You know. But we all also know what police officers drive around in. Big marked cars with lights and sirens in the top and a big symbol and about 57 antennas sticking out. They're pretty recognizable. How many of you freaked out when your law enforcement started driving the Chargers? Because you could drive a Charger and it was like a cool car, and then the police officers had the Charger. And when they had the Lincolns, nobody drove the Lincoln. So they're driving these Crown Vics and stuff, and you're like, oh yeah, that's a police officer. Now it's like, oh, is it? Oh, no, okay, I can go. Right? How many of you do that? You do. See, look at, you're all guilty. But we're teaching these teenagers that they should be safe. What about engineering? I have a good friend who's an engineer in Missouri. He says this to me. I'll always have a job as an engineer because we can't fix stupid. I firmly believe that someday driving will be like bumper bowling. You can't go wrong. You know, we put these rumble strips in the road in Missouri and the center line and the edge line. Still, people run off the road and crash. You know what we did in Missouri? It would not go over well here in Idaho. There were so many run-off-the-road collisions with trees that MoDOT came in, cleared the right-of-ways of all the trees. They cut down all the trees. Wow. People were livid about it. And literally, the MoDOT director was on TV, and he said, well, Missourians, if you could learn to stay on the road and not kill yourself by not paying attention, we wouldn't have to cut the trees down. And I'm thinking to myself, ouch. Probably not his best media moment. But he's right. Exactly. But you know, imagine this. I believe, NHTSA is working on these cars with sensors and how these cars interact with each other and what rules are we going to have with the self-driving car. I firmly believe that one of my brilliant engineer friends is going to come up with this concept that when your car runs off the road or is about to run off the road, not only does it auto brake, if you're going to hit something, that a huge airbag inflates outside your car and reduces the moment of contact, just like bumper bowling. You just kind of bounce off. Okay, we're good. We're always going to be distracted. We're always going to drive fast. So we can only engineer so much, right? What about this one? Hey, you like this? Lisa Lawson owes me for this. This is Lisa's little symbol here for Idaho's seatbelt program. What do you think when a driver's ed student sees their driver's ed teacher pulling out of the parking lot, calling their wife? What do you think that student thinks about you? Hypocrite, double standard, loser. I'm not listening to you, right? They do. Ever been driving down the highway, speeding? You look over, and the person in the car next to you is somebody you know. It's like going to church for a minute. You feel so guilty, you're like, oh, back off. Oh, slow down. We're so guilty at this. Law enforcement is the worst at this, and I talk to law enforcement a lot, and I can pick on them just a little bit. In Springfield, there's this PIO for Public Information Officer for the Missouri State Highway Patrol, and he always goes out and talks to kids about safe driving. Pull up to a stoplight, double right-hand turn lanes, you have to stop on red, go on green, and I look over at him. We're both in the right-hand turn lane. I'm stopped. It's a red light. And he's got, his phone right here, but he's got his hand on his computer, and he's typing at the stoplight. And I know him. The light turns green. He's still typing. And I'm sitting there, and I'm like, should I honk? Right. So the car behind him honks. He looks up, has that moment of awareness that, oh, I should have been going. And then looks over and sees me. And is just sheer panic on his face. And I can tell you exactly what he said, but it's not repeatable in public. So, I'm thinking, let's see if he's going to call me, right? He knows I won't answer. So I get to the hospital. I have 3 missed calls from him on my cell phone already. And so I call him back, and he's like, do not tell anybody about this. Like, oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed. I cannot believe you busted me. I'm like, dude, come on. If you're going to preach it, practice it, right? Can you imagine one of you getting busted? What's that say about your level of teaching, your level of experience, your level of expertise? Does that validate you as a driver's ed teacher? No. Makes you look like you're just collecting a paycheck. So how do we change a belief? I'm not sure, but I can tell you it's not enforcement, It's not engineering, it's not education. It's every one of us getting involved and setting a standard. Have we defined normal behavior in our cars? Anybody remember when doctors could smoke in the hospital? Today, if one of my doctor friends smokes, I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? That's like an oxymoron. That's like so opposite. I think someday we're going to get there when it comes to distracted driving or speeding or aggressive driving, all those things we do in our car. How many of you get in your car and you feel like, I'm powerful? Nobody's here. It's just me and the open road. Especially a day like yesterday, windows are down, radio's up, take off. You're feeling good, right? And we think we can do whatever we want. Oh, until we kill somebody or until we crash. How do we define normal behavior? Beliefs are easier to change than behaviors. Raise your hand if you believe smoking is bad for you. I won't ask you, but how many of you smoke? Raise your hand if you believe sugary pastries for breakfast are bad for you. How many of you ate one anyway? Exactly. Beliefs are easier to change than behaviors. So here's what I did. Teach this class at the hospital where if you are between the ages of 16 and 24 and you get a traffic violation, and it's your second violation, or it's what we consider excessive, you have to come spend 8 hours with me at the hospital, and I take you through this process of what happens to trauma patients. Not just the patient and the tubes we stick in them and all those horrible, grotesque things, but what it means for the family. What are the consequences? What are the costs? What value does this have on society? And we change beliefs by the end of the day, and I want you to watch this video I'm about to show you about the beliefs, and from the beginning, when I started interviewing these students, to the end, where we almost impeached them on their own word. I want to know, at the end of this video, do you think we changed their behavior?
I got a speeding ticket.
I almost hit an officer on the side of the road.
The man told me I didn't have a license. The police station told me I didn't.
Speed limit was 45 and it just changed to 55 in 1972.
I got a speeding ticket going 98 and a 60.
I wrecked and totaled my GMC Sonoma.
That's why I'm here. I've had several CNIs. I've had like 2 or 3
Excessive speeding.
I haven't been so lucky the last couple of years. I've gotten 5 tickets in the last couple of years.
Street racing.
I've had a few DWIs too.
Personal charges.
32 and a 20 downtown.
That would be my third.
Trafficking.
Numerous speeding tickets.
I got a little fender bender.
DWI.
Had a racing on public streets ticket.
I got a ticket for not having good insurance.
I wasn't paying attention at all on that.
And that's pretty much the extent of, I guess I just drive stupid. I actually try to keep it about 4 over.
I mean, I usually do drive 5 over.
I have to drive about 20 over.
If the speed limit's 65, I'll be going 80. So it's not that big a deal. I don't even think twice about it anymore, really.
But I'm going to be traveling in excess of 100 and 150 miles an hour.
I drive as fast as I feel comfortable with. You know, I don't go that fast. I don't always go 98. I drive as fast as I feel comfortable with.
I'm comfortable at 80, that's fine with me. I mean, I could even go 85 and 90 is not really twice about it.
I consider myself to be a decent driver.
Very much.
I would say I'm a decent driver.
Sometimes Sometimes I am. I have a tendency of driving fast, but other than that, I say I'm a good driver.
Yes, I consider myself a good driver.
Yeah, I think I'm an aggressive driver.
I consider myself to be a decent driver. Several CNIs, I've had like 2 or 3. I've had a few DWIs too, numerous speeding tickets. I've had a racing on public streets ticket. I'm not a good driver, but I don't consider myself to be a bad driver.
Variables, excessive speeding, paraphernalia charges, DWI, street racing, trafficking. I pretty much got control of the car for the most part.
I say I'm a good driver.
I almost hit an officer on the side of the road. 32 and a 20 downtown. I have to drive about 20 over.
I mean, I make my slip-ups. I'm not a great driver by any means, but I'm not a terrible driver.
I know that I've done some not so smart stuff, and I've actually endangered not only myself, but my friends and the people on the road. But I think as I've gotten older, I've gotten a little bit wiser about what I can get away with and what I can't.
I follow the rules of the road really, but I'm not a bad driver.
I have one friend that about 2 months ago was driving down the road and hydroplaned and lost control of his car, and he hit a tree and went through the windshield. He was in the hospital actually for, it was probably like a couple weeks, but as far as the visual damage that it did, I mean, he's got scars all down one side of his face, and his eyes a little messed up now, and still it's kind of weird to look back and see it every time. He looks different, you know.
I've had family members that have actually died from car accidents and not wearing their seatbelt.
The very first friend I ever had died in a car accident driving down 14. And he was 16 years old.
Sophomore year, he was a really good friend of mine. Was heading down to see his grandpa and slid off the road with his truck and hit a tree and died.
My best friend's aunt got in a car accident and was decapitated.
I just had one of my friends, wasn't even driving, he got hit by somebody, he was walking down the side of the road. They just plowed into him and took off. And that was just about 6 or 7 months ago.
And then my junior year, my really good friend played basketball with him forever, was drunk, really drunk, and he was driving on the road like 80 or so and hit a tree and died. So yeah, a couple of my really, really good friends died in high school.
When I was in high school, my best friend died. He fell asleep and ran off and hit a covert and died instantly. I mean, I've had people die.
There was one of my friends, he rolled his car, and I was the one who pulled him out of the car. And he was gone, right? Got hold of him.
I don't have a doubt, if, it's a matter of when. And if I don't change the way I start driving, it's going to happen.
But I always think, like, it won't happen to me, so.
I guess I have the attitude it won't ever happen to me.
Well, I'm planning on getting a motorcycle soon, so yeah, gotta be really careful when I get one of those.
We're young and stupid. And that's really the only way to put it.
How do we change their behavior? We changed their belief, didn't we? By the way, the kid who said he's getting a motorcycle, I saw him last week in Subway. He's still alive. When I saw him, I was like, oh my gosh, you're breathing. He kind of laughed about that, actually. How do we change that behavior? How do we change the culture? All of them talked about losing someone in a crash, like, oh yeah, my best friend died. It's always somebody else until it's us, right? What about you? Every day you teach people how to drive, but you get in your car and you speed. Here's the deal. Safety on our roads depends on the behavior of everybody else. These people, I'm sure you have some of these in Idaho. They're not just in Missouri. This guy's shaking his head like, yeah. What are the social norms in your peer groups? The people you ride around with, the people you hop in the car with, what is the social norm? This morning, the 2 people who rode with me in the shuttle. Did you watch me put my seatbelt on? Did the shuttle driver wear his seatbelt? Was he a safe driver? Did anybody call him out? One of the near-death experiences I had in life was a taxi cab ride at the Lifesavers Conference in Austin, Texas. I got into a cab. This woman was going to take me to the mall. And at the point our vehicle reached 100 miles per hour, and I was screaming from the back seat for her to pull over and let me out, a police officer pulled her over. I got out of the cab and got in the car with him. And he said, "This has never happened to me." And I said, "Me neither. Can you call me another taxi?" He took her to jail. When do we say it's not okay? When I'm riding in the car with my 69-year-old father, and he's talking on the phone to his buddy about the fishing tournament this weekend, I call him out on it. "Dad, I need you to focus on driving." "I'm experienced." No. Has nothing to do with your experience behind the wheel. It has everything to do with the way your human brain functions. We'll talk about that in my second session today. When are we, as society, going to try to change behavior? We have all kinds of behavior in our society. We have ritual behavior. Do you go to church? Ritual behavior happens at church. Oh, ritual behavior happens in the morning. I get up, I wash my face, I shower, then I brush my teeth. I never brush my teeth before I wash my face and get in the shower. If I do, the world may stop spinning. How many of you have ritual behavior? Habitual behavior. Ladies, how many of you get behind the wheel of your car? You hit the button and you call somebody. Most women in this country find it's a fantastic time to call your mom when you're in the car because you always have an excuse to get her off the phone. "Oh, I'm here, Mom. I gotta go. Bye." You're laughing because you're guilty. Habitual behavior. Reactive behavior. You know when you're driving, slam on your brakes and you do this to the person in the front seat? How many of you do that, by the way? I do. I'm like a safety person. I know their seatbelt works, but I do this anyway. It is to my purse in the front seat. Just a habit. Planned behavior. We have planned behavior. Oprah and her brilliant idea to have the no phone zone. You know, put your phone in the trunk, no phones in the car. That was her attempt to change behavior in our society, to set a new social norm, but this is now part of us. We can plan the behavior, but do we stick to it? How many of you have ever set a New Year's resolution for yourself? Exactly. Anybody last 2 weeks? Anybody make it all the way through January? Planned behavior doesn't go real well for us, does it? So no one thinks through the problem here. That's a big thing. You saw our terrible drivers in the video. I'm a good driver. It's not if, but when. That one girl said. I'm like, ugh. Raise your hand if you speed. In your car, you drive over the posted speed limit. Thank you, honest driving instructors. Raise your hand if you've ever talked on the phone while you were driving. Any of you ever looked at your phone while you were giving a driving lesson? Good. Good. How many of you have checked your email while you were driving? In the state of Missouri, we tried to pass this no phone law. The legislators in Jefferson City were so mad at me. One of them said, the chair of the Senate Transportation Committee said to me, "Holt, I do not know what you're doing to me." Said, "You are going to mess up my entire life. I drive 3 hours to Jeff City, 3 hours home every week, and I got to check my email at some point along the way." And I said, "Gentlemen of the committee, Exhibit A." And they all laughed. I thought that was pretty funny. He was mad at me. The bill didn't pass. But I made my point. They set this lame law in the state of Missouri that if you're under 21, you can't text and drive. Oh, but you can dial your phone, and that's okay. And by the way, the Supreme Court just heard arguments, and they haven't decided about can law enforcement check your phone. So if a police officer says to you, let me see your phone, you don't have to give it to him. All you have to say is, I was calling my mom. Okay. Right? So this whole distracted driving thing, you can dial, but you can't have your phone in your hand, that's really lame and silly. You see these signs on the side of the road? They're big, they're white. It says speed limit, right? Not speed suggestion. Not speed recommendation. Not drive this if there's a police officer in the area and you think you're going to get a ticket. That's how we interpret it. That's not what it says. How many of you on 84 coming into town went 5 over the speed limit? Raise your hand. Anybody go 5 over the speed limit on the highway? Anybody go 10 over? How would you feel if your driver's ed students were doing that? Not good. Not good. When I call Leanna to pew out on speeding 10 over when I'm in the car with her, I'm like, whoa, 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 back it up, Nellie. Oh, sorry, I have a little speeding problem. She couldn't set her cruise control because it was raining. And I said, hey, too fast for condition? She's like, oh my gosh, okay. I'm like, you kill the safety expert, it's going to be a terrible headline. She's like, okay, I'm good. It's all about awareness, right? Because we have this habitual behavior we do behind the wheel. You may have seen this before. I love this video.
Roses love sunshine, violets love dew, angels in heaven know I love you. Okay.
I know you're not honking at me. Hello? Hey, no, I can't park right now. I'm driving.
Come on. It's just a parody to show that cell phone driving is not the only thing.
I love that guy. He's a professional videographer and he creates educational messages that prove a point. Like this one. We think of distracted driving and we think of our phone, but how many of you are guilty of so many of those things he was doing? Now, probably not sketching or reading a book, but letting your mind wander while you're driving. We all do it. Have you ever driven somewhere, you went through an intersection, and then you thought to yourself, like 3 miles down the road, I know I'm on this road. I know I had to go through that intersection, but I sure don't remember it. Oh, yeah. Because we're distracted. It happens to the best of us, to the driver's ed instructors. We're all guilty of breaking the rules. We are all guilty. How do we expect to prevent highway deaths in Idaho if we don't change our own behavior? Do you see the car seat? Right here? This is a wrecked car. 17-year-old kid been at a party, drinking. We have these things in Missouri. It's sort of this cultural phenomenon. I'm sure it happens here in Idaho. They're called field parties. So the parent will host the party in a field somewhere. Everybody comes, they park their cars, the parent collects the keys, and then in return the parent provides the kegger, the keg and the liquor for these teenagers to have a big party. And the theory is nobody's supposed to leave. It's completely illegal, but it happens. This kid had been at this party all night, drinking, parked his car actually away from the field so he could leave because his parents had told him he couldn't go. So it's like 5:30 in the morning, he's driving home, blows through an intersection where there's a stop sign, and he didn't realize that he was supposed to stop. He hits this mom and her baby. Mom had worked night shift, had just gotten off work, picked up her kid, was on her way home for the day, or night, and the baby died. We hear stories like this, and they're sad. What do you think in your mind about this drunk driver? He's a loser. He's a scumbag. He should go to jail. He should be punished. How many of you have ever gone out with your pals, watched a ball game, had a beer or two, and drove your car home? Admit it. Guess what? That's drunk driving. What makes us, when we do that, any different than this kid? By the way, his blood alcohol wasn't even the legal limit. We think about him as a scumbag, loser, lock him up. The reality, if we consume alcohol and get behind the wheel, we're all scumbags. We're all losers, because what do we know about drinking and driving? Kills people. But if we changed our own behavior, we preach about it, we show gory videos, we try to get the message across to teens in our classroom, but we have a beer and drive home. How is that okay? It's not. We teach about the speed limit, we teach about distracted driving, and we, the safety people, do it. Do you ever feel guilty? You should. You really should. We are not going to change highway deaths in this country until we change our behavior behind the wheel. And it's up to us to hold each other accountable. It's up to us to put our phone down, to back off the gas pedal, to drive safe like we know we can drive. Because the cost isn't just our job. The cost to society, our medical expenses, lost productivity at work, loss of insurance coverage. You're going to lose your job, by the way, if you're a driver's ed instructor and you get busted. Societal cost of injury, emotional, physical cost. National Safety Council did a study, and what they found, average highway death cost Americans $6 million. Add all of those up, that's the number. It's expensive. I don't have that kind of money laying around. I worked a lot of years to get that kind of money. Here's the reality of what we're trying to prevent. She's dead. Here's what I said earlier. Everybody's a somebody until it happens to us. And we're not somebody anymore. You heard about your students who wrecked and died? I heard about those teens in Meridian or Nampa who died, who are injured, who are paralyzed. We hear the stories. It doesn't happen to safety people like us, does it? It absolutely does. So I'm challenging you. What do you have to do in your unit, your family, at work, to change your behavior behind the wheel? And how do you get the parents of your teen drivers to change their behavior as well? That's your challenge, Idaho. Thank you very much, and thanks for staying awake.